Welcome back to some more World and Economica. So where we last left off, well, for whatever reason, Hagana cried. I forgot about this, something to do, and then Lisa kind of got a little bit disappointed. But other than that, well, it's a lot to explain what happened. It's kind of a sad thing about her. But yeah, let's continue reading. The third investment contest sponsored by the Ratzinger Economics Research Center. The investment contest took place in a virtual world, but the securities market prepared for the event was practically no different from the actual one. There were companies, balance sheets, dividends, and from time to time unforeseen incidents, mergers, and even bankruptcies. The only links to reality were the exchange rates, interbank interest rates, the various energy markets, and the lunar clock. The contest ran for half a year with a total of 100,000 participants. At any one time, roughly 20,000 out of them would be conducting trades at their own pace. Each person starts with 10 million virtual moves and can trade for a total of 40 days. To qualify for the event, there was a system where contestants were selected one by one, either by the Economics Research Center or a supporting investment bank. And thus, many of the contestants invited in the early days of the contest had already finished their trading and had their performance evaluated. The performance results were broadcasted and updated in real time. Currently, the top-ranked participant, who went by the handle Mr. Trosh, managed to earn 45 million mools in 19 days of trading. Information from the Economics Research Center mentioned that many big-shot investment pros also participated for fun, so it was rumored that Mr. Trosh might have been a top of the league fund manager or someone from the proprietary trading division of an investment bank. Hmm. At the breakfast table, while absent-mindedly eating Lisa's ham and eggs, I spilled coffee on my leg just as I had finished gathering that information. I guess you aren't willing to be careful. Did you get scalded? Uh, I took the napkin and wiped myself minimally, and simply stared at the computer without wasting time putting the napkin back. Hal! Ugh. Lisa's loud voice brought me back to reality. Did you get scalded? She laughed cheerfully as she looked at me. It was enough to get my heart pounding as I had my hand on my chest, when I realized that the napkin was still in my hands before I gave it back to Lisa. So, did you get scalded? No, I'm fine. No matter what you are doing, it can wait till after you finish eating. The clanking sound of tableware brought me once again back to reality from the screen of my computer. Knowing the waste of time it would have been to argue, I stuffed my face with what was left and replied, "Thank you for the food." Jeez. I could see her that in disgust from the corner of my eye as I put down the tableware. The investment contest ran on lunar time and was open only when the lunar stock exchange was open. In other words, were I to have put all my energy into this contest, I would no longer have time to do my have to I mean it wouldn't in other words, were I had to have put all my energy into this contest, I would no longer have time to do any actual trading. However, I only had 70,000 mools compared to the 200,000 that would go to the winner, and they even said that the top-ranked contestants would be headhunted by Schrödinger Street. If that were the case, then instead of losing money slowly like I've been doing recently, trading virtual money and diving straight into the more rewarding contest was the right thing to do. Besides, looking around on the web, it seemed that the price fluctuations and behavior of stocks traded within the contest, although fictional, supposedly were no different from the stocks of actual companies. While I wasn't sure if this was the case, some kind person in their spare time did make and upload a table correlating the virtual stocks with real ones. Looking at the corresponding stock movements on the graph did make them look very similar. For now, I had downloaded the table and saved it, and without even taking my eyes off the screen, as my hand searched for my coffee cup, I ended up knocking it with the backside of my head. I'm not my head, backside of my hand. Will you stop that? While Lisa was being annoyed, I picked up the coffee cup and ducked my head down as I sipped it. Jeez, that's right, Hagana. That's right, Hagana. I would have returned my focus to the computer as usual, but somehow the mention of Hagana at the end of her sentence had caught me off guard. Despite my head being filled with all things concerning the investment contest, the events from yesterday came to mind again. Today I need to help with the lecture at the university, so I won't be around. You better be sure to eat lunch, okay? Nothing. Hearing no response, I took a quick sidelong glance. I could see Hagana with her usual sour expression turn away and nibble at her bread. I'm waiting for an answer. Lisa's smile. Hagana stopped munching on her bread and turned hesitantly towards Lisa. It appeared that whether there was a need to eat lunch or not was a point of contention with Lisa. But then again, when I would be immersed in trades, I would not have any time to eat lunch. Eat, you mean. Hagana was immersed within the understanding of a mathematical proof in her own way, so I could understand the reason to not be bothered. However, whether Lisa was fine with that or not was an entirely different problem. I will make lunch for you. You make sure to eat it, okay? Your answer? No, nothing. Hagana said nothing once more, but it seemed that Lisa's smile persevered as Hagana gave in and finally said something. Why, only me? Although she didn't look at me, it was clear that she was implying. Naturally, Lisa understood immediately. Just because Hal ends up not eating doesn't mean you get to do the same. After bartering so forcefully at the clothing store, Hagana acted like a child in front of Lisa. As I thought about that, I was drifting around in the sea of the net, absent-mindedly. But suddenly I realized that Lisa had turned towards me. Well, Hal, are you going to remember to eat right? Even though she hadn't bothered me while I was training up until now, she somehow decided to choose today to do so. I looked at Lisa and confronted her smile. It was a smile in poor taste. Is this going to cost me extra? Flabbergasted, she sighed in response to my desperate reply. Of course not. It's important for your growth to eat every day. If you don't, you won't get any taller. Obvious. This is like obvious anime talk of all things. Hal was like, whatever. I wasn't that short for my age, but if I had to be honest, I'd say I was a bit on the smaller side. I groaned in response. Then Lisa turned towards Hagana again and appeared to whisper something into her ear. When she did that, Hagana appeared shocked and started to cower as if one of her secrets had been guessed. She just like twitched. Then she looked downcast and bit down on her lip. Are you fine with that? Hagana looked conflicted when Lisa asked her that question, but soon enough she appeared to give in as she nodded her head. What the heck did she say anyway? I was perplexed until Hagana looked up slightly. It was clear that she was looking at it, so I was able to hit upon a theory. Or should I say, after looking awkwardly at Lisa's assets, she looked at her own chest. It appeared that she was rather concerned about her small size. Well, it was true that Lisa's chest was rather plentiful, and I suddenly realized that Lisa was looking at me as I had decided to take a gander myself. Huh? What? What? You're all shaken up. Lisa tilted her head slightly as she said that. Well, with darn my throat. Well, with that said, the two of you better make sure you eat lunch. However, I also won't be happy if the both of you hide in your rooms and eat. You two better eat here together, understand? At Lisa's words, I now understood why today of all days she was so consistent about making sure we ate lunch. Though it wasn't all that unrealistic to shake hands and make peace, this was a rather forceful manner of insistence. Lisa, the embodiment of what both amazed and bothered me, then had the nerve to wink at me. It was true that when I came into the living room, Hagana did not even once look at me directly. It didn't particularly bother me either way, but that wasn't because of any childish stubbornness either. I looked back at Lisa and just shrugged my shoulders. Alright, so that's how it will be. Lisa clapped her hands and cheerfully proceeded to start cleaning things up. I didn't know why she was so enthusiastic about it, but as I focused on my computer screen, I stole a glance at Hagana. As usual, Hagana had a sour look on her face and continued to chew on her bread as if I didn't exist. Phew. There weren't any additional restrictions in the rules for the investment contest. In addition to normal trading, buying on margin and short selling were also allowed. There was no daily restriction on the number of transactions, only a 0.1% transaction fee on this value of the stocks traded. The only special rule was that the participant only had 40 days of trading once they started. On top of that, after those 40 days were up, they wouldn't just close up all the positions and calculated the totals. It was simply that no more transactions would take place after that point. So if you held on to the stocks, their values would continue to change. I wonder if this was done out of concern for people who made more long-term trades, as opposed to people like me who went for many short-term trades in a single day. And then at the conclusion of the contest, the profit and loss would be calculated from the value of the stocks. In other words, if you were to carelessly hold on to random stocks, there would be little that would be done were they to slump in value afterwards. On the other hand, even if after 40 days, one was not able to reach the top, in terms of profits, there was always the hope that any retained stocks would be promising and bear fruit. With what? Bear fruit, thus rising in value afterwards. From the information grabbed from the official website, when it opened to the public, it was clear that, much like the actual stock exchange, the virtual one had its share of good days and bad days for trading. Does that include the Great Depression back then? There were days that had overall downward trends, as well as those with overall upward trends. Observing how things were progressing at the start of the contest, it seemed like an easy moving bull market. Looking on the net, most investors would time their start with when the markets were doing well overall, then go full throttle with trading for 40 days. Afterwards, they placed all their bets on a few stocks that looked like they would go up and prayed that they did. However, my situation was a bit different. When I received an invitation, there were only 44 days left in the contest. I was probably one of the last to be invited, I imagine. I could see how it could have been a disadvantage, but it was actually an advantage since I could take in everything before making a move. Furthermore, unlike the real markets, it was hard to get a feel for the virtual markets in the early days of the contest. In their spare time, a bunch of kind contestants collected and published data about various aspects of the contest. Furthermore, there were contestants who chat amongst themselves. From their conversations, it appeared that there were many long-term investors in the early days of the contest, and more short-term traders were called to the contest in the latter half. I was a more extreme version of the latter, which may have been why I got called up at the last minute. Besides, for the most part, I didn't mind the feel of the market. When the whole market felt like it was down, I would look for stocks that had over depreciated and pick them up at a discount. Then, either on that day or the next day, when everyone had calmed down, I would sell. If the market was on an upward trend, I'd just ride the wave. There were many methods when it came to trading, but I traded using the simplest of strategies. I had been doing ridiculously well just by employing that strategy. So this time around, I just had to keep going as I had been. Although I looked confident in my plans, I didn't feel like starting my trades right away. It doesn't look like it will work. I mumbled that to myself in front of my computer. Were I to begin trading? Ah, shit, I hate it. Somebody should slap me in the face for for yawning. But whatever. Were I to begin trading, then my 40-day period would start no ifs, ands, or buts. I didn't have time to hesitate, but I really was hesitant and couldn't bring myself to press the button to start trading. If this contest were exactly the same as the actual market, then proceeding as normal would have probably produced the same results. I heard the contest was not conducted annually, but rather on an irregular schedule. I also heard that this contest was part of an experiment to see if the real market could be reproduced. Since the beginning of time, there has yet to be someone who could unlock the secrets to the market. Even the greatest investors out there of infallible logic and reasoning, even Mr. Infallible himself could still lose big. If this experiment were to succeed, it would be the equivalent of unlocking the secret to alchemy. Of course, investment banks and funds were a bit more realistic than that, and it seemed that they basically used this as a means to fish for talent. Even to an onlooker like me, it didn't look like the organizers were a monolithic entity. It appeared that the lunar government also had its hand in this, so perhaps there was some reason known only to grown-ups that the contest was held irregularly. In other words, it wasn't clear whether or not there would be another time. If that were the case, then there wouldn't be another chance to win the top prize and get scouted for Schrödinger's Street. Thinking about that, I couldn't move carelessly. Failure was not an option. That was why I was monitoring the actual market and the virtual market at the same time. But what should I do at this late hour? What should I do at this late hour? I didn't feel like using the computer while sitting properly at the desk, so I placed it on the floor and sat cross-legged in front of it. I mumbled to myself as I sat cross-legged, then placed my hands behind my head before looking up and falling backwards. If I had a different method. While I looked at the ceiling, I went over what I knew about the various methods of trading. There were three main techniques when it came to trading stocks. Given that owning stocks was basically owning a piece of a corporation, one technique focused on the basic principle that sound corporations would rise in value while bad ones would drop. Looking over the minute financial details of a corporation's performance and examining the products they manufactured before investing was a fundamental way of trading. The second technique was to ignore such fundamentals and focus solely on the price and fluctuation of a stock to gain maximum profits. This was a trading method that relied heavily on plotted graphs of stock price changes on charts, utilizing that movement to make a trade. Analyzing the previous charts of countless companies, one would predict whether a stock would likely rise or fall given the curves. This was called technical analysis. The third technique was based on the assumption that stock movements were essentially random, and it was impossible to predict people's actions. There was apparently some statistical results stating that there wasn't much difference in performance between people sweating it out looking up companies' performances, staying up all night to analyze charts and choose stocks to trade, and monkeys throwing darts randomly. They asserted that the price fluctuations of stocks are random, and thus were called random walkers. In my case, I focused on the good merits of all three techniques. I took news about a particular business into consideration and made predictions based on the stock's price and fluctuations. But even then, it was hard to say what would happen to the stock price. So in the end, I would rely on intuition before trading. At first, it was amazingly efficient, and even I wondered if I wasn't some kind of genius. Certainly, there had been times where, despite my confidence, I had purchased stocks that had dropped in value and, thinking it was a bad situation, had relinquished them only to watch them skyrocket in value afterwards. Overall, I had done well, but even though I had faith in my trading methodology, losses started cropping up soon enough and my mind began to fill with doubt. Was, was what I was doing really the right way? Trying to take the good points of all three methods was meaningless, as it was really more about which one method of the three was the better choice. What bothered me and made me hesitant, in other words, was this. Thus, when I heard about Hagana's mathematical skills, I realized that there was a possibility of a fourth method of trading. Using mathematics to make predictions of the future was commonplace in physics. For example, if you were to go visit the service page of the orbital elevator, there was a prediction as to when and where the orbital elevator would collide with the garbage floating around Earth. The time delay it would have on service and the danger level were then displayed. Estimates by the space station took into account pieces of garbage larger than the tip of your thumb. If there was the possibility of anything large colliding with it, it would be destroyed with a laser or caused to fall back to Earth. Up until now, there had not once been a major accident or error. It could be possible to perfectly predict the movement of tens of thousands of pieces of garbage no larger than the size of your thumb as it orbited the Earth at several kilometers per second. There would be no reason that such precise calculations could not also be used to predict the price fluctuations of stock. Those who believed in that theory were called quaints, and there was apparently a smattering of them who held PhDs from Lunar University. If Hagana possessed that talent and was able to mimic the trading methods of quaints, of quads, as I thought about that, I realized that it was practically a pipe dream. Even if Hagana were able to understand all of that, it was an entirely different thing for her to agree to help me. It's me. At this point, I had just finished the morning combining websites for tricks on how to do well in the virtual markets. The clock had just about hit noon when I remembered Lisa's orders. I grumbled to myself in annoyance, but I realized I was running on empty at the same time and obediently headed into the living room, where I saw a wrapped up sandwich sitting on the table. I should use the bathroom first. I poured the rest of the coffee from the coffee maker into my cup, tossed it in the microwave, and headed to the bathroom. 3 meals a day for 10 bulls was rather cheap. I took a leak and then washed my hands. I grumbled to myself as I headed back into the living room, and there I stopped completely in my tracks. Somehow at the same time, Hagano also came into the living room. No response. We were both rather surprised by each other's appearance and looked away, pretending the other wasn't there. However, Hagano sat down at the table first while I just groaned. As expected, I wanted to be excused from sitting alone with Hagano while we quietly ate our sandwiches. For now, I took a detour over to the microwave and picked up the warm coffee cup. Hagana was quietly eating her sandwich nearby and didn't bother to even look up. I heard from Lisa that Hagana's overly pushy haggling at the clothing shop yesterday was her way of thanking me. If that were the case, then it was possible that I was being insensitive in what I said, but on top of not knowing about that, Hagana had kicked me squarely in the shin. Rather than it being a favor to me, shouldn't Hagana apologize to me properly then? That's what I thought, but judging from the silent Hagana's mood, I could sense her anger pretty clearly. Was I so wrong? I wanted to ask her. I guess Hagana might just be more of a princess type after all. I shrugged my shoulders as I sipped on my coffee, and I headed back to the table as I thought about taking the sandwich back to my room to eat. It was at that moment that I was aware of Lisa's computer, which sat in a random spot on top of the sink. A pinhole camera, the kind you use for video calls, was powered on and pointed directly at the table. The heck? Now, why would she record these two? She would go that far. In my mind, I was disgusted by this, but I honestly had to tip my hat to her for going to that length. Besides, if I took a deep breath and thought about it, though we were all living together under one roof, thinking about how long I'd had to stay here did depress me. In such a confined space, whether it was the toilet or the bath, chances are I'd run into her rather often. It was annoying to think there would be an awkward silence between us each time. I didn't think I had done anything wrong. Hagano was wrong, if anything. Nevertheless, I was determined that this was where I should show my sincerity as a man. Coffee cup in hand, I returned to the table. I figured sitting directly diagonally from Hagana's chair would be the farthest point for her. The sandwiches were placed carefully on the plate in the center of the table. I took one of them and started chewing on it. It appeared to be handmade by Lisa, at least the ingredients were certainly very grown up. There was tuna with leafy greens and peas, and there was lean meat in between. Wow, that sounds pretty tasty to be honest. It seemed that she took into consideration my mentioning how strong the flavor was, and the mostly mustard flavoring was kept to a more reasonable amount. While Hagana's small mouth was halfway done eating her sandwich, I had already devoured my first. I licked my fingers and took a sip of coffee before reaching for a second. It was then that I spoke to Hagana. "You're fine without anything to drink?" I thought I had chosen something harmless to say, but Hagana did not look up at all. "Want me to make you some coffee?" I spoke out to her again, but I didn't get even the slightest reaction out of Hagana. Her disregard for me was almost refreshing, in a way. Despite my attempts to meet her halfway and compromise, it didn't appear that she wanted to concede anything. While I wondered why I couldn't get out of this gridlock, I decided that since I already tried to reach out to her, I might as well try again. "Hey." I changed the tone of my voice slightly, which caused Hagana to react. Though she was ignoring me, it wasn't as if her ears were closed too. Hagana stopped eating and I took that time to speak. "I heard from Lisa in regards to what happened yesterday." Oh my god. Just ... None of this shit happened. So, for her. She either forgot or she didn't even realize. Hagana did not respond, nor she did look up. It was your way of thanking me, right? Hagana did not reply as expected. However, she did go back to eating her sandwich. On top of that, she was eating more quickly than before. How should I say this? I didn't know about that and I spoke without thinking. I mean, it wasn't that I wasn't thankful for you bringing the price down, but well, it isn't that. I then wondered how I ended up rambling like this, and I was fishing for words to break the deadlock. And at that moment, shut up. Hagana replied with a simple phrase. Oh my god. Is it? Oh no. I was completely taken aback and I stared at Hagana. Hagana stared at the table as if something bad about her was written on it. And then, after a short period of time, she started eating her sandwich again. And this time she was going even faster than before. It was clear that she was angry. No, wait a sec. While I was left dumbfounded, it was as if I felt some sort of major premonition. I'd lose my cool in the next few moments, I thought to myself, as if it were some sort of weather forecast. If nothing else, Hagana's actions were uncalled for. I don't get it. I said shut up. Wham! I could feel the hairs on my temples standing on end. Huh? Why do you say that anyway? You were the one who kicked me without reason and I'm already in the worst position. So what is with that? Hagana did not look up. Surprisingly, the hand that held up her sandwich stopped moving. I took a deep breath to hold back the impulse to toss the coffee cup in my hand. But the anger in me did not abate. I glared at Hagana and spoke. And back on that subject, it was you who was wrong for all that unreasonable haggling. According to what Lisa said, it was the result of Hagana being a bit too enthusiastic about doing it. But if there was no ill will and all could be forgiven, then there would be no hardship in the world. But Hagana didn't say anything else. After finishing her sandwich, she stood up from her chair. And then she looked at me with anger and disdain and spoke. You don't even work. On hearing those words for a brief moment, I forgot about my anger and just replied with a question. Huh? Did you steal money from your mommy before you ran away from home? Is that why you put on airs about having money? The malice in Hagana's words was way too clear, but those words were so unexpected that I couldn't stay angry. You don't work and you're on the computer every day and who are you pretending to be by paying off that interest? I was dumbfounded as I looked back at Hagana. I was not working? We are doing all that we can to survive. We are different from someone like you who was born on the moon. That was the one thing I didn't want to hear from someone who came from Earth. Hagana fired up those words one after another. Lisa's way too nice. I don't know why she would protect a punk like you. And then, even though it looked like she still had something to say, it seemed like she was so overcome with emotion that the words didn't come out. Hagana looked pained as she knitted her brow, then suddenly turned away and left the table. Ah, wait! I called out to her reflexively, but Hagana did not turn back. Just like that time at the clothing store, Hagana did not look back at all and left the living room. Before long, I could hear the door to her room close. Once again, I was left there, dumbfounded. But at least it wasn't like that time at the clothing store when I had no idea what was going on. I remember the look in Hagana's eyes when she said that I didn't work. That was the look that stuck out of my mind when I first came here. That was the source of Hagana's crabby attitude, it seemed. What was going on in her mind, and that she came to the moon because she was bought, and that she also financially burned the place she fled to after running away from home. On top of that, even with her mathematical ability, which she used to teach children, she was probably dismayed that she couldn't help solve their fundamental problems. And that same Hagana who saw me on the computer every day in the church probably saw me as a punk kid who just played around all day after running away from home. I probably looked like an example of a lunar-born, lunar-raised idiot whose mind had gone slack from the low gravity. Knowing that now, how Hagana was acting didn't seem all that unreasonable. I wasn't really angry about anything at that point. That didn't quite settle the problem though. For example, should I go to her room and knock on her door in order to tell her that it was all a misunderstanding? The fact that I was making a huge profit on the stock market was and not actually playing around on the computer? Should I say that she shouldn't misunderstand me? And after I said that, Hagana would open her door, show her understanding, and apologize. Of course, I didn't imagine that would be the case. I just figured it wasn't possible given Hagana's stance. With everything, it was a matter of timing. You couldn't undo what was already done. I've learned that many a time from trading stocks. I scratched my head and sighed. I realized that it didn't really matter whether Hagana liked or hated me, but it really wasn't a good feeling for her to have animosity towards me due to a misunderstanding. To say nothing of Hagana's supposed mathematical genius, which I couldn't use in this case. If that genius could be utilized, it would be a happy outcome for both myself and Hagana. However, until this misunderstanding was resolved, it would be difficult to get her assistance. I leaned back as my whole body left exhausted from this, and then I turned towards the computer on top of the sink. I could imagine that she was spying on all this from somewhere, but it's possible that she would just let the power on, and that nothing was being recorded. Thinking about Lisa's personality would be fitting for her to make such a mischievous threat. Even so, I looked at the camera and bit my lower lip. What should I do now? Naturally, there was no response from the computer. I sighed once more and looked up at the ceiling. Due to what happened with Hagana and also not being able to find a good investment technique, I stared blankly at the trading on the investment contest virtual market. I wasn't really trading, but while looking at the movements of stocks, I was checking out what would happen if I bought a certain stock here or there. The result was a feeling that it could both go well and not go well. However, I kind of knew the cause of all of this. It was definitely Hagana. However, it wasn't about whether Hagana hated me or misunderstood me. What Hagana said started to stab at me bit by bit. We were doing all that we can to survive. We are different from someone like you who was born on the moon. The people from the town I lived in came from troubled parts of the earth. For someone like me born on the moon, I had yet to know how terrible the moon could be. However, the moon who came from Earth knew enough about its ills, and also those of the moon. Having those words thrust at me like that, there was nothing I could say in response. Nothing in response to being called spoiled brat with its head in the clouds. Well, it was true that I left home because of a dream even I thought ridiculous. Even I thought it's ridiculous. Furthermore, trading had recently not gone too well, and I felt I was at a standstill, lost. However, that didn't mean that I wasn't trying my best at life. Realizing that I was making such excuses, I noticed that apparently I felt morally inferior to Earth folks, even more so than I had imagined. They were folks with dirt on their feet who worked hard to get to the moon. They abandoned their hometowns and came to a new frontier. Otherwise, they would have been dragged along by the unreasonable systems in place of the world. When it came to understanding the harshness of reality, I hadn't really had the same experiences Hagana had. I wasn't an adult like Lisa either. Even though I had managed to earn 17,000 mools, it wasn't like any hard-working person could save that up, and it certainly wasn't enough to live on for the rest of one's life. Rather, if my trading hadn't gone well, I wouldn't have been a classic moon-bred loser with no education, no money, and no idea of the hardships of Earth. I suddenly lost confidence in what I had been doing when Hagana told me those things straight to my face. Perhaps something was wrong with me since I had pondered this simplistic plan of collaborating with the math whiz Hagana just because things hadn't been going well. If good things happened just like that, then no one in the world would suffer. Since my trading had originally gone pretty well, perhaps I thought the world was a pretty easy going place. And I was the only one who realized it. A pampered kid who knew nothing about the world. I didn't realize that, as unbearable as it was, I had to live with that moniker. Nothing to say. I couldn't focus on trading the stocks in the investment contest, as it seemed that something was clouding in my thoughts. I felt worry, hesitation, and anguish as I stretched out on the ground. And then my mind hit upon one thing, and that was when I was summoned to Lisa's room, and the sensation I felt from her hug. Lisa was a kind and wise adult. What would happen if I sought advice from Lisa? Would she show me the right thing to say? I was honestly thinking about something this pitiful. Beats me. I wondered where that brutish motivation I got. The motivation I had right after I left home. Perhaps I was just naive about how society works. Perhaps I didn't have grandiose dreams to go where no one had gone before and to be the only one to rise. I mean, not to raise, rise. To be the only one to rise where no one had before and leave my footprint there. I kind of realized that I was about ready to tear up. Even though I knew that thinking about it only made things worse, I could not stop. That is why, if I didn't hear a strange sound from afar just then, I might have drowned in the vortex of my own insecurity. Huh? Alright, I'm gonna go end this here for now. So, the heck? Oh, whatever. So, next part, we're gonna continue where we left off. So, like, comment, subscribe, and see you guys later. Let me check real quick. Uh, yeah, there we go. So, save that. See you later. Have a good one.